me, shout you.
Oh yeah, says who?
Push me, shout you. Oh yeah, says who? Push me.
Well, there you have it. Mad Max demonstrating a fundamental principle of physics. Newton's third law, by the way. And you tend to find that when people are pushed, they tend to shove back. Now, Iran has just elected a new supreme leader, Mojtaba Khamenei, who incidentally the Israelis and the Americans say is unacceptable. Funny, I thought it was up to the people of Iran to decide who runs Iran, not us. But then again, we've done that in Ukraine, we've done that in Romania, we've done it in a lot of places, so it really shouldn't come as a surprise that we expect to appoint leaders for other countries. But the thing that people should be aware of about Mojtaba is that this man was in the compound when his father was assassinated in that vile, underhanded airstrike by Israel and America, which started this conflict. But more to the point, he was injured, but his wife was there with him. She was killed. His daughter, his 6-month-old baby girl, was blown to bits in that compound. Now, do you not think that this is a man ready to shove back? I'm Bintang Bernie. This is Friday News Review, and oh yeah, says who? Friday, the 13th of March. Good for some. Welcome to the program. Now, we're talking about provocations there, as you can see. And aside from the many personal provocations which Mojtaba Khamenei may have for wanting to continue this war, this response, if you like, against Israel, I just did something. I just had a quick look up and I prepared a list on my laptop of some of the provocations which have happened to Iran as a nation. And I just went back to 2010. So between 2010 and 2024, I just found, just off the top of my head here, there were 27 direct provocations by Israel against Iran. That's almost 2 a year. And I've got a list. I'm just going to run through them quickly because these are things that you will never be informed about on mainstream media, to show you just why Iran has finally had enough, why the push me has resulted in a shove you, as we've said. Now, starting January 12th, 2010, we had Masoud Ali Mohammadi, physics professor at Tehran University. He was blown up on his way to work by Israeli agents, okay, because he worked in nuclear physics. June 2010, we had the Stuxnet computer virus, which was developed by the US and the United States. What that did was that infected the computers at a lot of Iranian sites, and it caused the centrifuges, which are used for processing nuclear fuel, which, as you recall, is perfectly legal to process it for civilian purposes like nuclear energy and biomedical products. It's essential. But this Stuxnet virus caused the centrifuges to spin out of control, and it destroyed 1,000 of them. And it affected, there were 30,000 Iranian computers infected by this virus, a deliberate cyber attack by Israel. November 29, 2010, we had Professor Shariari, a nuclear engineering scientist. He was on his way to work in his car with his wife when his car exploded with a car bomb, killed him and injured his wife. Of course, no concern for an innocent person like his wife being killed. As well, Devani, another scientist on the same day, he was injured when his car blew up. So clearly a coordinated attack by Israel. April 2011, they discovered a virus nicknamed STARS that was infecting their computers in their nuclear facilities. July 23rd, 2011, Darush Reznayejed, I think I got that right. He was an electrical engineer, and he was working at a nuclear facility. Two gunmen on a motorbike came past and shot him, executed him once again on his way to work. November 13th, 2011, Iran contained what they call Duku, the third virus, attempting to disrupt their nuclear program, which, remember, was legal. This was a legal nuclear program. All countries have nuclear programs. They don't, unlike Australia, they don't all have to make nuclear submarines as a result of them. So that was the third cyber attack. Then you had January 11, 2011. Roshan, the engineering graduate, was killed when two people rode past on a motorbike past his car and left a bomb under it. It went off. April 2012, we had the wiper malware, which was using computers in the oil ministry to wipe their drives. Once again, another cyber attack. So, I mean, we keep here in the West talking about the cyber threat from people like China and so forth. Look how many cyber attacks have been perpetrated on Iran. 9th of May, 2012, another virus, the Flame virus, which had attacked government computers, and it tried to steal government data. Now, all of these are cyber crimes and essentially acts of war. This is cyber warfare carried out by a sovereign nation against a sovereign nation. January 31, 2018, a Mossad team, so we know it's Israel. This is a Mossad team. It raided a warehouse and stole information from safes in Iran's nuclear program. And once again, this is illegal. You can't just go into other countries, raid their government information and steal it. All attempts, of course, by this pathological murderer, Benjamin Netanyahu, to prove that Iran was building a nuclear weapon and that would justify a war against Iran. Remember, though, this is 2018. He was doing this from 1990. So it seems like the Iranians were having a bit of trouble putting this thing together. 28th of October, 2018, the Stuxnet virus again attempted to damage Iran, caused huge traffic jams and stuff, which took days to sort out, affected all their cameras, which is interesting because the attack on Khomeini in his compound is believed to have used the Iranian traffic cameras, which were hacked to see when Khomeini and the top officials were going in, which is what precipitated this entire conflict. 9th of May 2020, cyber attack hit the computers which regulate maritime traffic on Iran's southern coast. Israel was reported behind the attack. Well, of course it was. The Washington Post actually in that one said that Israel was behind the attack. So even mainstream media is being forced to say that Israel has been attacking Iran. And remember, a cyber attack is an act of an aggression. It can be interpreted as an act of warfare. You're actually attacking another nation's systems and infrastructure. You're doing it electronically, not with bombs. Just wait. And then November 27, 2010, we had Fakhrizadeh. He was a prominent scientist. He was assassinated in a roadside attack. Once again, you're going into countries and executing their scientists. Imagine if that happened to us. Imagine if Iran was responsible for killing, in Australia, the heads of ANSTO. I hope not, because George Brodakis, a former classmate of mine, is one of them. But I would hate to see anything happen to him. But can you imagine the outrage if these people were coming into your country and just shooting people, executing them? Absolutely, totally unacceptable. April 11, 2010, another explosion at the Natanz power plant hit the centrifuges. Once again, that was a report that 300 kilograms of explosive had been smuggled in and set off in Iran's nuclear plants, which I stress again and again were perfectly legal plants to have at this point. They were not building nuclear weapons. There is no evidence that they were. They were running a civilian nuclear program, just like a lot of countries do. I don't see people going in and blowing them up. July 9 to 10, 2021, massive issues with hackers getting into the Iranian computers again. It's a group called Indra, which attacked Iran. June 23rd, 2021, an Israeli quadcopter drone, struck a facility in Iraq for manufacturing centrifuges. So once again, a blatant act of war. That's an act of war. You can't just go in and start blowing things up in other people's countries. February 2022, 6 Israeli quadcopter drones then destroyed hundreds of Iranian drones, at a base. Once again, an act of an aggression. April 3rd, 30th, 2022, Mossad agents went into Iran and kidnapped Mansour Rassouli. He was part of the Quds force for the IRCG. They broadcast a video of him saying that Iran is making a nuclear bomb. I have to fess up. But of course, later on, what came out was that he was tortured. And he came out and he said, what I said was said under duress, I was tortured, and I retract everything. If people are torturing you, you'll say anything. Torture has long been found to be a completely unsatisfactory and unreliable source of information. May 22, 2022, Colonel Kadei from the Iranian Republican Guard. He was shot outside his home. He sat in his car and he was shot 5 times in his car by gunmen. Obviously, once again, a Mossad plot. You see how many times these people are going into Iran, actually going into the country, killing people, attacking them with cyber warfare, blowing things up, blatant acts of aggression. Then we move on to May 25th, 2022, more quadcopter suicide drones from Israel. These hit a military complex, damaging buildings and drones, killing an engineer. So once again, an act of aggression. May 31 and June 2nd, 2022, 2 scientists died from food poisoning. Remember the food poisoning issue where the Mossad had poisoned their food, so these people eating dinner got sick and died. And these are scientists, by the way. They're not military personnel. They're civilian scientists. We have January 28, 2023, suicide drones were from Mossad, hitting a military installation in Iran. April the 1st, April Fool's Day. We couldn't let that pass, could we? 2024, Israeli airstrike that killed 3 generals in the Republican Guard. Now, once again, planes flying into another country and bombing it. I think that's called warfare, don't you? Then we had April 19, 2024. Israel launched an attack into Iran. Now, remember at times Iran is responding with some drone attacks and stuff. I'm not discounting that. But who is initiating this? Who's starting it? Then we go down to July 31, 2024. That's when Ismail Haniyeh, he was a political leader of Hamas, and he was in Iran to attend the inauguration of the president by invitation. Now, this is a diplomatic event. Whether you like Hamas or don't like Hamas, this was a diplomatic event, and he was assassinated while he was there. So you can see, and I mean, that's not including 2nd of April 2024, remember, the Israelis blew up the Iranian embassy in Syria, in Damascus. Just went and blew it up because they didn't like some people who were in there. Iran has been the victim of continual provocation by Israel, by the United States. Now, at what point do you ask yourself, do you strike back? Think of the analogy. If you're sitting next to someone on a bus and they keep prodding you with a toothpick, Although these attacks are more like a dull knife, I would say, bigger than a toothpick. But someone's sitting there and they just keep prodding you with a toothpick. At what point are you going to turn around and say, enough, stop? And if they keep prodding you, at what point are you going to try and break that toothpick or snatch it off them? Well, countries are essentially collectives of people, so they behave no differently to individuals on a larger scale. And now we're finding ourselves at the point where Iran is actually saying, no, we've had enough. We've had enough, you've done enough. And of course, let's not forget this little gem that happened a while ago.
On July 3rd, 1988, near the end of the Iran-Iraq War, the U.S. Navy cruiser Vincennes, deployed to the Persian Gulf to protect Kuwaiti oil tankers, shoots down an Iranian passenger jet that it mistakes for a hostile Iranian fighter aircraft. All 290 people on board are killed. Iran calls the incident a barbaric massacre. U.S. officials initially defend the action, claiming the aircraft was outside the commercial jet flight corridor, flying at only 7,800 feet, and descending toward the Vincennes. A month later, U.S. authorities acknowledged that those previous claims were inaccurate, and that the Iranian plane was, in reality, in the commercial flight corridor, flying at 12,000 feet and not descending.
So, I think we can all agree that Iran has been the object of intense provocation over multiple decades. And the great irony is that Iran has actually acted with commendable restraint. Really, if you look at this logically, it should have been Iran that was launching attacks on Israel. And yet, once again, in the middle of a peace process, remember last time they sent a delegation to a peace process, the Israelis tried to blow them all up. And in the middle of peace negotiations, once again, Iran has been subject to not just a provocation, but a major attack. We attempted to destroy the entire Iranian government and cause a revolution in their country, which of course failed spectacularly. And now the fruits of the US and Israeli assaults on Iran, the continual provocations, are coming back. And the initiative has passed to Iran. Iran has the strategic and tactical initiative at the moment. They're closing the Strait of Hormuz, despite all of the American rhetoric from, Action Man Hegseth and old Donnie. The Americans are unable to get anything to come through the straits. And if you remember back in 1987 when they tried to escort tankers through the straits, well, what happened? The USS Stark was blown up, hit by Iraq, which were our friends at the time. We were providing them with ammunition and munitions to fight Iran. Again, another major provocation. And ultimately, you had the ignominious sight of the US Navy having to sail behind the tankers because they were afraid of mines sinking their warships. So the future of this is firmly in Iran's control, and Iran clearly has decided to once and for all eliminate the Israeli threat and the United States' presence in the Gulf. They are insisting that the United States no longer maintains a presence in the Gulf. And why shouldn't they? Because all the United States' presence has done has incite wars, violence, and increased tension in that region of the world. They've done nothing to assuage our fears of a looming global war and the potential for nuclear conflict, which we've talked about before. And it would be entirely logical for Iran now to start building a nuclear weapon, because the fear, as I've said before, is that with Israel getting pummeled, and mark my words, they are getting pummeled, they may resort to the Samson option and decide to use a nuclear weapon to end the war with Iran, because that would pretty much be their only exit ramp at this stage. That would be their only exit strategy. So hopefully that won't happen. But countries around the world must be starting to think about their allegiance with the United States, because the allies of the United States are now suffering. And the entire world is suffering because of Israel. The entire world's economy, every one of you, is going to suffer because of one single individual man, Benjamin Netanyahu, a pathological murderer who is responsible for destroying the world's economies. And mark my words, this is just the beginning, because this isn't going to end anytime soon. and the world's economies are going to suffer horrifically. There is no oil, no natural gas, no fertilizer coming out of the Middle East, and of course no food going back in, which is another issue we've talked about. So the future of us all is going to be impacted because of the crazed ambitions of a homicidal lunatic, Mr. Netanyahu, who has now got the whole world to ransom. And smart governments would be starting to distance themselves. But of course, unfortunately, countries like my own gutless, weak government in Australia has just announced our erstwhile foreign minister, Penny Israel is Never Wong, has just recently announced that Australia will be sending a Royal Australian Air Force wedge-tail aircraft to protect, I've got to stop myself from laughing when I say it, to defend the United Arab Emirates. Now, the question begs, why is Australia suddenly defending the United Arab Emirates? The UAE has allowed American aircraft to take off from the multiple bases which it hosts and to bomb one of its neighbours, Iran. So the UAE is now an active participant in a conflict against Iran. So if they get hit back, then I say, well, they've brought that upon themselves. You know, the overriding word that comes to everything happening in the Middle East right now is karma. These countries and Israel are finally receiving a taste of what's been dished out over the years. You know, I mean, no one's talking about how horrific the Israelis were in Gaza, but suddenly the Iranians are repressing their own people, which I keep saying, show me evidence of. I keep hearing it, but I don't see any of it. So the Australian government has decided to once more put our servicemen and women in harm's way and send them to defend the UAE, where they will be targets. The wedge-tail aircraft has been chosen specifically because it's a highly advanced, it's essentially an AWACS platform, and it's there to make up for the gaps in the American radar coverage, since the Iranians have effectively knocked out the American radar network, and Israel is receiving no warnings now. There are reports, I've seen them myself on television, there was a Spanish journalist recently, because of course CNN and the mainstream ones are so heavily censored, they'll never tell you this, but the Spanish journalist was saying, we're no longer getting warning sirens before the missiles hit, because Israel no longer knows when the missiles are coming. So Australia is going to go over there and try and fill that gap, and that will make our aircraft, a high value target for Iran to knock out. And the question begs, why are we defending the United Arab Emirates? Now, what I did, I looked up online, I'm going to read something to you from line, and I deliberately did this. You can go to sites like Amnesty International and Middle East Eye, and you'll get very detailed information on the state of the government of the United Arab Emirates and the human rights issues there. But I thought, no, let's just go to Google, because Google will always give you the pro-American, pro-Israel biased view of the world. So let's see what Google, a Western puppet, has to say about the United Arab Emirates. So let me just read this to you, bear with me. This is from Google, remember. Civil rights in the United Arab Emirates are severely restricted with no political parties and strict censorship laws. While the Constitution guarantees basic rights and equality, the government suppresses dissent, and there are credible reports of arbitrary detention and poor treatment of prisoners. Then it goes on. Key aspects: freedom of expression and assembly, a basic fundamental right in a democratic society, remember. The government of the United Arab Emirates strictly controls speech, criminalising criticism of rulers and state policy. Peaceful assembly and association are heavily restricted. Now just think of that, peaceful assembly. One of the hallmarks of a democratic society, something we're all supposed to stand up for, and yet here we are defending a country in which it's restricted. Legal system and justice. The United Arab Emirates lacks fully independent courts, and there are reports of unfair trials, torture, and forced disappearances. So I ask you, ladies and gentlemen, is that the kind of country that we should be standing up and protecting? Aren't we continually told This is all about fighting a repressive regime in Iran. And yet there, from the most mainstream of media, Google, you can see that we are now going to defend one of the most repressive regimes in the world. And as I've said many times, women in North Korea would have far more rights and civil liberties than they do in any of the Gulf states. So one has to ask, what is wrong with the Australian government? Why are we going and defending a regime which has all the hallmarks of what we're supposed to be defending against? The mind boggles, doesn't it? Yet again, Australia shows its willingness to kowtow to Israel. Australia shows that just like most Western governments, it is completely controlled by Zionists and it's infested by Zionism. Sad to say. Anyway, on that cheery note, I'll end the program. And as always, remember, Bintang says there are two types of people in this world. Make sure you avoid them both.
Use your right, but don't imagine that's